Welcome everyone. My name is Lara and I am the Community Manager at European Leadership University. Thank you all for joining us today. Before I welcome and pass the floor on to our speaker today, Paul Collins, I just want to give a little bit of context about our university and our program. So we at European Leadership University have the mission to bridge the skills gap in Europe and specifically in the Dutch job market. Through our innovative and digital master's programs. So currently we have masters in data science. Now you might wonder, why are we talking today about consultancy if we are offering programs in the tech field? This is because we believe that a good data scientist has, of course, the excellent technical skills, but a great data scientist also has excellent leadership skills. And that is why leadership is an integral part of any of our programs. And we are today talking about consultancy skills in the 21st century in the digital age. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Now during the webinar, you're free to drop any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. And we'll be covering hopefully all of your questions during the Q&A. So please feel free to drop them at any time. You don't have to wait till the end of the webinar to do so. Now today I would like to welcome and thank you very much for joining us today, Paul. So Paul, he is the founder and chairman of Equidec, which is a UK-based M&A consultancy firm. So he's an excellent person and expert to talk about consultancy today, also because previously he has founded not only Equitech, but also another consultancy business and works as a consultant. So thank you again, Paul, for joining us today. And with that, I would like to pass it on to you.
You're welcome, and welcome from me, and thank you for everyone joining this webinar, including the data science ELU students and those others who've joined today. We're very much welcome. We're going to be talking about a really important subject today, but one that's also quite misunderstood. Lara's also made a little link there between the data science technical skills there and consulting skills, and often they're mixed up, right? So I'm going to try and hopefully bring that out and just express why consulting skills themselves are so important. You'll notice that this is described as consultancy skills. For the sake of this session, take the words consultancy and consulting as the same. I'll probably use the word consulting because I tend to use that most of the time. We've got about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of slides, something like that. But hopefully going to have the majority of this session through the Q&A. Very, very happy to answer as many questions as that you might have on this topic area. So first of all, for those who don't know me, I just want to say a couple of things about me and my career and background, which is relevant to today's topic. My first real job was actually working for IBM in the late 70s and early 80s. So for those youngsters amongst you, yes, I'm very old. When you know, and in IBM, personal development and skills training was really taken very seriously. And back in the late 70s, early 80s, IBM was riding high, and so everything was done very much with a bottomless budget. I can honestly say that in the 8 years I spent with IBM, there probably wasn't a month gone by where I didn't have some time on a skills development course. And I obviously learned a lot in terms of subject matters from that, including consulting skills, right? But also learned a lot about the importance of training and skills development and how that can really make a firm world class. Well, I was already mentioned that a little later I founded a management consulting firm. It was called WCI. I founded that in 1986. It started off as a pure play management consulting firm, and a little later on we added an IT services business. And that firm grew to 350 consultants and $100 million turnover before I left that in 2004, having sold that business to private equity in 2002 for $100 million. So that was a really successful story, and I put a significant amount of the reason for that success is that, rather like IBM, I got the message, right, and we took training very seriously. We were very strong on both technical skills development, consulting skills development, and later some of the other things that I'll talk about here in terms of how you build a consulting practice. My current firm came off the back of that, right? And I'd had some, let's say, bad experience of the M&A advisory world in building that firm, and when we came to sell it to private equity. So, confident consultants that we are, I decided that the task of M&A in the consulting world could probably be done better, and so started Equitech in 2004. And I can say that you know the core skill of this business is actually being able to help other consulting firms grow, right? And then when they've got to their target valuation, we get involved in leading the sale or the investment in those businesses. So just a couple of things about Equitech before I move on. We would call ourselves a global M&A bank. We really do two things. We're involved in the few years prior to somebody doing a transaction in helping prepare them for that transaction, and that could involve significantly growing the top line of the business or the profitability of the business, where our aim is to be firmly focused on value creation and trying to drive up the value of the organization prior to a transaction. We have globally about 200 or 300 clients at any one point in time who are on a journey to a future transaction. The business is managed across 6 offices in 4 continents now, and 70 full-time staff in the business across that office infrastructure. The part of the business that probably makes the majority of the money for us is, of course, selling those firms, right? So when they get to their target valuation, we're involved as their lead advisor to take those businesses to market, where we're actually looking for a really good strategic home for them with a synergistic fit, or we're looking for a financial investor who may wish to invest in the business or buy part of the business, right? The various different routes to realize equity. So I would say that the core skill in Equitech that we've developed and we pass on to our clients is this ability to be able to understand how to build a consulting firm and then realize the value of that consulting firm when we sell it, which is different from consulting skills themselves, as we'll come on to in a moment. You can see this on our website, right? But we're the most active M&A bank in the knowledge economy these days, right? We talk very much about knowledge economy as including the worlds of consulting. It also includes software and technology firms. Some over 60% of our transactions have been cross-border. So if you look down that list of firms that have been sold there, and you see the flags there, you can see that many of them are cross-border. And increasingly, private equity is taking a good number of these firms now, as we're finding that the world of private equity represents a very flexible and good home for firms for the next stage of their growth. The consulting industry itself is actually huge, and you'll be pleased to hear that it's growing pretty much every year. And if you look in some markets, you occasionally get a bit of a stall, maybe for 1 year. But if you look globally, then the consulting industry just keeps on growing, round about 5 or 6% every year. And amounts in 2020 this year to just under $300 billion, right? So it's a massive industry. And if you take the world that some of you as students represent, the data science people, then my guess is that you could see yourself fitting in any one of those categories there. I mean, you know, on the one hand, you could say, well, you're technologists, right? But actually, on the other hand, you're going to be doing work that helps the financial side of consulting activities, the HR side, operation, strategy. It pretty much cuts across the board, all right? So I would see the world of data science fitting in all of those different categories. So great market to be in, and as you'll see in a moment, the topic of data science is incredibly hot. I wish I could find more data science consulting businesses to sell. We would grow even faster in Equitech if we could find those. It's as you all know, it's a relatively new topic area. And it's really hot, right? I mean, the M&A world goes through phases like any business and any market. And at this point in time, if your business is attached to the word data science, right, then there are far more buyers out there for your business than there are people who've built firms that are capable of being sold. When I was writing these slides last week, and you can see the date on the announcement at the bottom there, 20th of February, there was a big announcement from Capgemini in France that they just acquired a company called Advocas in Sweden. And as you can see from the description there, Scandinavian business intelligence and data science company. And this is just one of many examples that we could point to. We've been involved in selling some ourselves, and I say if we could get more of them, then that would be great. So those of you who are students, get out there, drive the companies you end up in to become bigger, and then hopefully we can sell them to someone even bigger. It really is a great field that you've moved into. So well done for that. So I want to come back to the point about consulting skills being misunderstood, and I've really described three different skill sets here, and we're going to talk in more detail about these in a moment, right? But the majority, I suspect, of what you're being taught at this point in time, right, involves the technicalities, right, of data science. Although I was pleased to hear Lara say that you're also involved in leadership skill development as much as that, because at the end of the day, there's no point in having great technical skills if either A, nobody else knows about it, or B, you don't have the interpersonal skills to be able to persuade others that what you come up with your new technical skills has got validity. And that's where the skills of consulting come in, and we'll split those out into more detail in a moment. And I would also then distinguish those as separate from what it takes to build a consulting firm. And I've already mentioned, right, that probably if you look at those three skill sets and you look at what we do in Equitech, we are mostly firmly fixed on that bottom box, right? So we're about skills development in our client base on how to build their consulting firm. We somewhat take it for read that they know their subject matter. So whether it's data science or it's business intelligence or it's supply chain logistics or it's processor engineering or whatever it might be, we assume that they know their topic area, and that's why clients come to them. We also assume that they've got some basic understanding of consulting skills, and that they are able to persuade clients to come to them in the first place. They're able to be compelling when they persuade clients on the results of their analysis, etc. And clients hopefully come back to them, right? So we make a certain assumption about that, although I have to say that that assumption in the middle block there isn't necessarily always a good assumption to make. And we sometimes find ourselves going back up this tree here. And whilst we felt that we were going to be spending a lot of our time helping a company on consulting firm building skills, we often find ourselves going back into the middle box and helping them understand how to be better consultants. And in that particular task, we tend to work with partners. And I'm going to mention one of those in a moment, right? Because in my view, they're certainly the most impressive one coming out of the UK. And have been involved in training many of the very well-known large consulting firms globally. So the fact that they're based in the UK is incidental. That's how we met them, all right? But they deal on a global basis, and that's a firm called Openside. And some of the material you'll see coming up a little later comes from their stable. So I think it's worthwhile taking a look at what we mean by consulting or consultancy. And so I took some definitions out of various dictionaries and Wikipedia. And I think that they're just instructive, right, in helping understand why consulting skills, as opposed to just technical skills, are really important, right? So first one there, the business of giving expert advice to other professionals. Well, your advice will get nowhere if you're not able to be compelling, if you're not able to be persuasive, if you're not able to have good analytical skills. And these build up upon the technical skills that you might be learning, whether it be data science or any other the technical subject matter. Second one, engage in the business of giving expert advice to people working in a professional or technical field, right? Slightly long-winded version of that from a different dictionary. And then there's a split here between internal consultants and external consultants. Some of you might find yourself working in large corporations as an internal consultant, where you're being employed by that business because of your technical skills, because they recognize that they need the subject of data science to analyze problems in their firm. And they want to use someone who has that skill set, right? But also someone who's capable of communicating why it's important and the results of their analysis. So here, someone who operates within an organization but's available to be consulted on areas of their specialization by other individuals acting as clients, right? So there are many great examples of firms that use the internal consultancy approach to progress new topic areas until it becomes, if you like, a business as usual part of an organization structure. And then, of course, we've got then the majority that work for the big names out there, the Accentures and the IBMs and the PwCs and the Infosys, et cetera, et cetera. Now, someone who's employed externally to the client, either by a consulting firm or through some other agent. So they could be individuals acting as a contractor or acting through some other firm, or they could work for a large firm like the ones I've mentioned. Whose expertise is provided on a temporary basis, usually for a fee, right? So external consultants obviously make money directly for themselves or for other third parties by charging for the advice they make. And consulting firms range in size from sole proprietorships, the contractor market, consisting of single consultants, small businesses consulting of a small number of consultants, to mid-large firms, which in some cases are multinationals like the Accentures of this world. Then the next one interesting is someone who has influence over an individual, group, or organization, and with the accent there on influence, but also who has no direct authority to implement change, which is a really different cut on the world of consulting, right? Because you're not like a manager in a business or a director in a business where you can direct or tell people what to do as a consultant, and because of that. Because your advice is essentially advisory, if it's going to have any value to the client that you're working for, you really need to have good persuasive skills. You need good presentation skills. You need good communication skills, et cetera, if you're to get your point across. Because it's not that you can just tell the organization what to do. That's unlikely to have an effect. There is an International Council of Management Consulting Firms, right, and that has a code of ethics that all consultants worldwide, if they sign up to the ICMC, have to work by. And he says one of those is only provide practical advice that works. Well, that's kind of, an interesting point, right? You have to be sure that the advice that you're providing is work. You may be analyzing their business as a generalist, so that suggests that being able to be a consultant requires even other technical subject matter skills to do analysis as a generalist. So you can't just look at the business that you're consulting with as a data science. You need broader skills, right, in order to do analysis, but maybe solving the problems that you come up with as a specialist, right, and that way you would be back into your main topic area. At all times providing the client with the best available advice and support. And in order to be able to know that you're doing that, you need to have set up mechanisms to be able to get feedback from clients, to be able to communicate with them in a way that encourages them to provide you with honest feedback. Otherwise, you'll never know whether the advice you're providing is good quality or not, right? So quite interesting, I think, to look at these definitions of consulting and see how broad they are in terms of the implication of your knowledge of a client or a business that you're going to be consulting to, and also how your technical skill, in this case, some of you in data science, which fits into that, right? But by no means is the total topic area. The UK's Management Consulting Association, that's a member of that ICMCI that I mentioned a moment ago, did some survey work using Openside, the firm I mentioned a moment ago, to put that data together. They did the survey and they put this report together, and they were trying to look at the type of consulting skills development that people were getting today versus what they felt they needed. And the chart on the right was what, in this case, that the young MCAs, the up and coming ones, if you like, in their 20s and 30s, right, who are seeing the sorts of skills that they feel they ought to be creating. And on the left is what they were actually getting from the firms that they were working for. And if you look at the one on the left for a second, there's only really that little block of 18% in dark blue down the bottom that I would say goes anywhere near the sort of consulting skills that we've just been talking about. All of the rest of them, whether they be core consulting specific like data science, or about professional qualifications like PRIMS and Sigma, etc., or more technical skills or more induction skills, more on-the-job skills or technical skills. These vast majority of them, maybe 70, 80% of them, don't fall into the category of the ones that are on the right, which are the ones that the younger consultants who are coming through the ranks at the moment are feeling that they need to progress their careers. So there's a mismatch there between what they're looking for and what they're actually getting, which is a problem. I took a look at what the World Economic Forum was saying just recently in their 2020 one that just happened not too long ago, and they looked at the top skills necessary for growing businesses, and on the left there, and with a contrast against 2015, if you look down that list, there's not many that infer technical skills development. There's an awful lot of them that suggest soft skills development, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence. So I think it's fair to say that that in the future jobs that they're seeing in the 21st century, that they're seeing, again, much softer skills required, all right, in order for people to operate in the sort of jobs market that we're finding. Of course, a big part of that jobs market, as you saw from that early slide on the growth of the consulting market, will be people moving into consulting. It's a growth industry. So I mentioned Openside. They're involved themselves in consulting skills development. There are many of their clients that are also Equitech clients. We have no financial links with Openside at all, but if our clients ask us where should they go to develop their consulting skills, then we would generally point them at Openside first as a first point. And they have a very interesting model that, reading from the left here, talks about consult, manage, build, and lead. And interestingly, as you see later, this tends to be the way that careers are progressed in consulting businesses, all right? So often the requirements of a consultant when you first come into a consulting firm is that you can interact, you have a technical skill that's in demand by that organization, but B, that you've either got some skills or you're prepared to develop those skills to be able to consult with the client base. So if you look at the skills on the left there under consult, these are the sorts of things that you probably need to develop to just be able to consult with a client. And this isn't talking about managing any consulting engagements or managing clients, building a consulting firm, or building, leading a consulting firm. Right? This is just to be able to consult with clients, and this is independent of your technical subject matter expertise. So analytical problem solving, incredibly important, right? You saw that on the World Economic Forum list, quite high up, both in 2015 and 2020. Cognitive flexibility, your ability to be able to mentally move quickly, right, from one topic to the next, one subject, and have great flexibility of thought. Critical thinking, challenging skills. Logic development, can you look at a set of data, right, and interpret that data into information and see the logic, the patterns that sit behind it. Presentation skills. Frankly, in the world of consulting, if you are not able to stand up and present, you're going to be very lost very quickly, right? And that's a topic area in its own right. I can remember both in IBM and my short time in AT Kearney that presentation skills development was really rammed home to us. And you'll find that in most walks of the consulting world, you just have to have that ability to present to your point of view. Structured analytical thinking, the real core consulting process there. So if we move from that to managing in a consulting organization, managing clients, managing people, complex decision making, conflict management. Things don't always go smooth. So how do you manage those conflicts when they arrive? Effective communication skills. Can you either in a one-to-one or a small group or a large group situation communicate effectively with those different groups of people? Emotional intelligence again. Performance management. If you're managing people, if you're managing projects, you have to have KPIs around those, right, that are effective and appropriate for what it is you're managing. Again, presentation skills important in managing projects, in managing people. And then project and engagement management, a complete different set of subject matter skills for managing projects, managing clients. Building is about building the firm from a business development perspective. Part of that is adopting a consultative approach, right, to business development, right? So rather than feeling you're going in to sell to a company, take the view that they're going to be buying from you, right? You having analyzed and come up with some points of view or some information that maybe the client didn't know before, right? And because you've impressed them with that knowledge, right, then they're going to buy what you have, rather than you feeling you have to hard sell to them. Forming and offering a point of view. How do you do that? How do you illustrate the firm's values through your behaviors in front of those clients? How do you manage critical conversations with people? Often clients, particularly in the early stages of an engagement, can be quite challenging. They're going to be critical. You've maybe been brought in over this group of managers by the board of that company, and they'll be challenged by that. They may feel negative about that to start with, and that gets you into some very awkward conversations sometimes. How do you manage that? Again, presentation skills. You see this keep coming up. Storytelling, incredibly important. As human beings, our ability to be able to tell stories is one of the things that sets us apart from the rest of the world. Right? This ability to be able to link things together in a story that's compelling to people. And understanding client value and articulating a value proposition. In Equitech, we say that we've probably made more money for our clients by improving their value propositions to make what you're selling to clients a no-brainer. It really should be easy for clients to be able to see the value that you're about to deliver and be able to make a link between the fees that you're charging for your time and the cost and the benefits that the client's going to get from your work with them. That needs to be explicit, and that's what a value proposition is about. And last but by no means important, right? Being able to lead the business, to lead the firm. And this has a lot to do with building your own personal presence, your ability to make impact, how credible you look, what your reputation is like. All of these help your ability to be able to build presence, right, and therefore lead a firm of individuals. How good the organization is at disrupting and managing disruption. If you can find a way of doing something different that makes you look unique in the eyes of your marketplace, right, then that can often be a very fast way to take market share. Again, emotionally intelligent skills, we hit on that a few times. Again, how to identify now and illustrate the firm's values. So not just illustrating them, values you've been told, but as part of the leadership role, it's identifying them, it's building them, it's creating them, and then demonstrating them through your personal behaviors to your own staff and clients that they're either prospects or existing clients. Leading and embracing change. You're most of you involved in technology. Technology is having a massive impact and has done over the last 10 years or so on the world of business. We're really, I think, for probably the first decade for many, starting to see massive return on investment from investment in technology. And frankly, as an organization, whether you're a consulting firm or a client in whatever field, if you don't embrace that change, then you'll be dead in the water. Performance management skills. If you're running a business, if you're running a group of people, you need to be able to manage them and know whether they're performing and weed out the poor performers, etc., etc. And last but by no means least important, making the right strategic decisions. Which market should you be in? Which services should you be offering? Which technical skills should you be developing for the future? Are all of the types of things that lead to the sorts of strategic decisions you need to make. And I think your ability to go far in the consulting world as an individual will depend an awful lot on your skills development, right? Obviously combined with your aspirations, right? There are some people who absolutely love the world of data science and couldn't see them doing anything more than working on projects where that's important. There are others at the other end of the spectrum that want to build and lead their own consulting business, right, and everything in between. So that some of this depends on your aspirations and of course a little luck along the way, right? But if you imagine starting off on the left-hand side with those technical skills and with those basic consulting skills to be able to do your role as a consultant and convince others about the results of your activity. As you move towards the right is typically how people progress through a consulting organization, to the point where in some cases some of them leave the organizations they're in and set up firms on their own, right? And so it tends to be a good way of looking at career development. So I've said enough. I'd like to hand back to Lara now, who hopefully has got a few questions that we can take, and happy to answer as many as we can during the course of the next half hour or so.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much. That was very enlightening. So anyone could drop their questions either through the chat or the Q&A. And for those of you who are also participants in the master's program in data science, you will also be able to unmute yourself and actually either share your ideas, your reflections, or questions. Maybe I can start off with one question. So one thing you said is you see that the actual sector of consultancy has been growing a lot in this 21st century. And I also already highlighted the skills that we would actually need as consultants. Mm-hmm. But considering that there's a growth of consultants around us, how can I stand out as a consultant myself?
So I think first and foremost, the start point, right, the bar that you have to get to is demonstrating excellence in your subject matter, right? So if you can be perceived to be an expert in your subject matter, then that goes a long way, right? But so I think that's the start point. I think then to be able to demonstrate that you have solved critical and important problems with clients, ideally clients that are well known, right? I mean, the fact is that when you start as a consultant, it's likely that the clients you work for, and this goes frankly for many of the small to medium-sized enterprise consulting firms as well, so not just individual consultants, but it's often the case that the clients that you work for are much better known than you or your consulting firm is, right? So being able to reference the work that you've done in those clients and demonstrate that you've solved a problem, and to have people that can talk about what you've done. And I think when you go beyond that, so if that's raised the bar a little further from technical skills excellence, the next thing then I think is to decide on a niche that you want to take your subject matter into. If you stay as a generic data scientist, there's no doubt that in the short term, where demand far exceeds supply for people in that discipline, then there's probably always a job for you. But like all topic areas, that they're fashionable. They have a certain lifetime associated with them. So it could be that in 5 years' time, supply has caught up with demand, and it's people that have then taken their knowledge into a niche that will have greater demand for them from that niche, right? And so either niching yourself into a certain market vertical, so like the pharmaceutical sector or the automotive sector or wherever. So trying to concentrate on solving problems in that sector so that you can start to relate to what keeps a CEO or a board awake at night and how your subject matter can help solve some of those problems, and being very visible, in the world of social media, online, in the LinkedIns of this world, right, where people can see that you've got not only a subject matter expertise, if you like, the horizontal competency that you've demonstrated, but you also have a vertical expertise, a market vertical where you've been seen to solve problems in that market.
Great, thank you so much. So any questions from the program participants or other attendees? Questions, or also happy to hear maybe some thoughts or reflections as you've been listening.
Hi, I have one question, but since I just joined in the middle, maybe you already answered it, but I'm going to continue.
Yes.
Hi, it's Sarah. First,
hi.
Nice to calling
Welcome.
and speaking with you. Okay, and I have question because sometimes when you are going because I'm in the middle of looking for a job.
Yes.
And in some part it is exactly when you are consultant with your client as well, because they don't know any process of data science or like that. They think as you as a, I don't know, the magic or something, and they don't know some part needs data engineering, and it is very hard for me to explain them this is not my job. And if I, for example, say this is not my job, it's kind of unprofessional because they think I'm not educated in that case, and they are not continue with the process also. But I would like to know how can I manage and show that I know some part, but it's specifically it's need to be other person to be data engineering part and help me in that case.
So is this, so you're saying this is, so I understand the question. So this is where you're either working directly with a client or you're working with a consulting company for a client?
Yeah, it's I think if you are working with the consultant company, it's already they know, I think.
Yes.
But sometimes no.
Yes.
But when you are directly with the client who doesn't have any idea about the
Yes.
data science,
Yes.
it's very, very difficult to explain and divide this together.
Yes.
So I need
yes,
your
I understand.
help. Yeah.
I understand. Okay, so we did touch on this a little earlier, right? When we were talking about the if you like, the communication skills necessary to be able to make your point, right? And I think part of that is to do with getting your client prospects, right, to, or indeed, frankly, if you're in the business of trying to get a job in this field, your future employers, to get them to understand about the topic area. I mean, let's face it, it's relatively new. And if you take 100 people out there in the business world, there's a reasonable chance that a very high percentage of them won't really understand what data science is. So I think I think it's not wrong for you to make an assumption that people don't know, and then actually to put some material together that either you talk through or you present to them, dependent on the setting, the situation, and tell them what data science is. And the best way to do that would be to do it through an example. I know when in a few years ago, right, before data science really started to get traction as a topic area, there were people out there in the consulting world doing data science. It hadn't got the profile that it has today, but there were people who were analyzing data. They were looking for signals. They were looking for patterns, and using that methodology to help a client understand a particular problem. And all the ones that I came across who were excellent at using an example of what their technology or their methodology does to make the point are the ones that were successful. So if you could think of a real life example that relates to the person that you're talking to. So in other words, do your research before you talk to the individual, whether it be a client or a future employer. Do your research about what they do, and actually put an example together of how data science could improve their business. Just work it up. It doesn't need to be anything too complicated. In fact, the simpler the better. And it shouldn't take you more than half an hour to do. But I think that ability to be able to simplify your topic area and get across the value that it can bring either to a client or to a prospective employer is really important in either you being recruited as an employee, or in fact convincing a client to invest in your time in data science.
And actually, I did the exact thing you said.
Yes.
And I made the example and lots of things, because, for example, one job, the description was, I should say, my background is financial mathematics, and I'm doing another master's degree, data science as well. They need a quantitative analyst, data science, they need a data engineer, and when you are explaining them, they are divided or a position, and it's very hard for them to accept it because they have to spend money. So they are looking for someone to do all the things together. And it is very hard for me to convince them that no, you should hire, for example, 3 people rather 1 people to doing something.
Yes, I understand. Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think you should be shy at feeling that you should be educating those people that you're talking to. Now, clearly, it requires tact. It requires diplomacy. It requires all good communication skills in order to be able to get your point across in a way that somebody isn't upset that you feel that you're preaching to them, all right? But I suspect that in this topic area, which I say is you all know is relatively new. It's a necessity to be able to explain what it's about. I can remember when I first set up WCI, and we were implementing the Japanese just-in-time manufacturing techniques. That's what we did in the first 5 or 10 years. Our biggest challenge was educating the market on the benefits of JIT. And there were such misunderstandings of what it was about that for the first 5 years, I would say, a lot of what we were doing was market education. And because if they don't understand it, how are they ever going to invest in doing anything with
Yeah.
it, right? And I believe, you know, this is a very, you know, early adopter stage on data science, right? And there's educating the market's a big part of it.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for explaining it.
Thank you, and thank you also, Zahra. Any further questions? So let me, there's a question on the Q&A, Paul, that I would like to pose. Yep. It is, as an experienced data scientist, but a new consultant, how do I market myself against existing companies and the bigger management consultancy firms?
Okay.
So I assume as someone with maybe less experience, potentially as a freelancer, how do you position yourself when there's these bigger players in the field?
So I think unlike a lot of topics, right, that where there might be huge supply. So I mentioned a while back process reengineering, which was a topic of the 1980s. Frankly, on the sort of business process reengineering was the fad, was the subject that everybody wanted to do. You know, if you tried to sell yourself as a process re-engineer today, right? There's so many in the marketplace. It's being commoditized, even though a lot of it still goes on. It's very difficult to market yourself as a freelancer consultant in that area. The advantage you've got with data science is that, and honestly, take this from me, and I see this every week in Equitech, that there is more demand from the big consultancy firms for data sciences than there is supply. Far more demand, and I would say this is a global problem. It's not market geography specific. So I think if you can demonstrate excellence in your subject matter, so in data science, right? So first of all, I would say, how do you do that, right? Are there obviously having qualifications is part of it, right? But are there some projects that you can work on, even if they're small projects, where you can demonstrate that you've achieved a result for somebody? And frankly, that might not even need to be paying projects, right? You know, you might go along to some local businesses in your area and do some pro bono work, all right, to be able to have some client references and some specific client projects that you can talk about, so that you are credentializing your expertise in data science. So I think that's the first thing you do. And then secondly, I think if you want to be a freelancer, I think you should have no problem in selling yourself into the other consulting firms and working through them to start off with. If this is your first movement into consulting and you want to be a freelancer, and that's fine, and I think that's a valid career direction. But I would try to get to work on some large consulting firm engagements. Because you'll learn a hell of a lot about how the big consulting firms work with big clients. So that'll be skills development in its own right for you. But B, you'll be able to say, I worked on this project with Pfizer. I worked on this project with Ford. I worked on this project with big name firms, that will enable you then to start selling your services direct to clients. And once you've got one of those big names associated with you as an individual, it doesn't matter that you did it through A.T. Kearney or you did it through Accenture. That really doesn't matter. The fact is you were a part of that team, providing the data analysts input to it, and that will mean that you'll be able to sell your services directly to clients.
Thank you. And maybe as a follow-up question to that, as a freelancer or external consultant, how should you go about setting your rate?
I would say, look at the market first and foremost, all right? So do your research on what the market is offering. And obviously, if you're selling yourself as a freelancer through, say, an Accenture, then Accenture needs to make a margin on what you do, all right? And the rough rule of thumb that we use in our consulting clients is if you sell for 100, they have to sell for 200, right? So they'll make 100% markup, or another way of looking at it, a 50% gross margin on the contractors that they use in their work, right? So if you're selling through other large consultancies, recognize that they have to make a margin on your time. Find out what those large firms are charging for your type of work to their clients. And let's say that's, I don't know, €2,000 a day or something like that, or €3,000 a day. And pitch yourself at half that into those firms, right? And you will probably be successful with those firms. If you're going direct to clients, as an individual to start off with, even if you have demonstrated expertise and a real expert knowledge in data science, if you're going directly to clients, then you probably have to come in somewhat lower than what the big consulting firms are out there. So if you just accept what I said, if you're selling through those firms, there's a 2-to-1 difference in price, then maybe somewhere between the price you might charge into a large consulting firm and the price that they charge out to their clients might be where you would pitch it. Yeah, and then just test the marketplace. You always have the ability to come down with negotiation when you're talking to clients. When you're in that phase of persuading them to take you on as a consultant, it's very difficult to go up in negotiation, right? So just recognize that as well. And there's going to be an element of experimentation. The other thing you'll find is that certain market sectors, client market sectors, will pay more than others. So in my old firm in WCI, the pharmaceutical sector, one of the reasons we ended up concentrating a lot in pharmaceutical and life sciences is because generally they paid better fees than, say, automotive, or even better fees than in many cases financial services, right? So different market verticals pay different fee rates. Do your research, find out what clients are paying for some of the big firms, and then come off that.
Thank you. So we're coming to the end of our hour together. I just want to see if there's any closing questions from anyone. All right, so in that case, Paul, I would like to thank you very much, and also all of the attendees, everyone who was with us this hour. Thank you very much for joining us. We have recorded and we'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel. So if there's any slides you would like to go back over, or any of things Paul has mentioned during his presentation or the Q&A, you can do so, and I'll be sharing the link with you. Again, Paul, thank you very much for joining us and all the insights you gave today.
You're welcome, Laura, and thank you for everybody for joining, and for ELU for putting this on. It's been a great last hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.